joining a group of vampires as they meet to discuss the new arrangements of the city and to hear what the Baron, formerly the Prince, Gunnar Thorson, has to say on the matter. His sheriff negotiated an armistice on his behalf, and for the most part, it seems as if their demands were met. Tonight, he kind of plans to discuss what exactly that means for those people who stand with him, um, as well as discuss what exactly is going on in the city and what his stance on those things are. With that, I will turn it over for people to introduce themselves. Gunnar, as is his typical choice, is holding Elysium in the Vlegenbos, which is a small city forest. Many fewer of the Anarchs, but previously many kindred were not terribly comfortable meeting in a dark forest. As you guys arrive, Gunnar does have a large stone altar here. It's got bloodstains on it. It's definitely seen actual use. And he is not present yet. However, his right-hand man seems to kind of be ushering everyone in. That would be Victor Mihai, who's served a variety of roles under Gunnar. Currently, he's considered the Chamberlain or the caretaker for the lands when the Baron is not present. For those who have not met Victor yet, let's see. We can get something. There we go. So Victor is unusually well dressed for the setting. He's actually got a long coat on, trench coat style, but he's got a vest and tie under it. He's chatting a little bit, kind of checking out who's all here. Seating is largely log benches set up. It's a very rustic environment.
What's the area look like again?
It's a small clearing in a forest. Fairly dark.
Oh.
There are small torches up for light, if that makes you feel any better.
A little bit. Not terribly much, but yeah. Okay.
I mean, they're torches, so.
Maria will saunter in. Basically the same as the picture. Looks Hispanic, Mexican to be precise. She'll find herself a seat, kind of just glance around and wait.
Ailey kind of walks in and takes a quick glance around and just kind of takes up residency kind of in the back area and zips up her coat a little bit and just kind of watches everybody else. This is if the other Elysium was new. This is definitely a new one as well. So being as they're outside, she'll make sure she's standing far enough away, and she'll still light up a cigarette and sit there and puff on it as she's looking around.
The 1950s gentleman will stroll in, see the other gathered kindred, smile at each of you, and then go take a seat next to Maria, talking about their dinner date later this week.
Just give him a wave as he comes over. Seem a little relieved to see people she knows. Oh, okay. Yeah, I figured we could be at a bar or something and chat.
Of course. I actually have a recent purchase I made, and he slips you a card with a free latte and a half hour of internet time.
Oh, thanks. Stick it in the pocket. I don't have any free samples you'd want, I don't think.
Well, you let me know when, and we'll meet there. It'll be wonderful.
Sounds good. Does Allie still have resting bitch face?
She always has resting bitch face. It's kind of her staple.
She'll wave to Allie.
She'll give her a nod of the head as she takes a puff off of her cigarette.
Okay. She figures that's the best she's going to get. She's going to look around.
And as people are piling in, and they kind of seem to group together a little bit just with people they know, that sort of thing. But most of them are starting to head towards seats, get themselves in some sort of comfortable position.
Does Maria recognize anyone at this gathering that was at the last one?
I assume Sophia is there. She was the one that I was standing next to at the last gathering. And I will...
Yeah, so all of the... in fact, all of the Anarchs listed there are present. Not all of them were present at the last meeting, but every Anarch who is at the kind of collective meeting is here. Probably the most unusual of the group is Ron, who is Malkavian. And he is dressed as a very morbid looking clown. Very out of place in the forest.
Clown in the middle of the forest.
Is it like Jester Clown or Clown?
Like Ronald McDonald if he hung out too long with Pennywise.
Ugh. Oh.
At that, Ailey is just gonna kind of quickly finish what's left of her cigarette, put it out, and stick the butt in her pocket, and she's just gonna walk up and take up residency on one of these log benches by Maria and Zachariah here, and she's just gonna kind of lean over. And like she's not gonna blatantly point, but she's gonna look at the clown dude and she's like, "You gotta be fucking kidding me."
I have to actually check my phobias because I take that half the time. No.
There was
Okay.
that recent cinema film that came out. Perhaps he was a fan.
Maria's just pretend like she didn't see him. Just kind of look around.
Oh, but is now really the time to do that? Like, you know what?
People like what they like.
You guys want to roll me a perception alertness?
It's the way you say it.
Watch.
Cat, I need my keyboard cat. Just let me move a little bit.
Standard diff or
Yes.
ooh.
See, it's hashtag or pound. Standard diff B6.
Yep.
Sweet. Do it right. I got one. Sorry.
All right.
All right.
With 3 successes, Allie, you notice that his skin under the makeup is quite burned, scarred and blistered. Almost looks as if the skin is melted.
Okay. And she kind of gets this look of, oh, okay. And she leans over to them and she says, or maybe he's just really monstrous underneath. And she kind of does the motion over her face.
Well, usually, people who are monstrous are skilled in hiding their monstrosities.
But being monstrous isn't always a physical attribute either. She just kind of chuckles.
Does he appear to notice us talking about him, or those two talking about him specifically?
He seems to not notice much of anything.
That's cool. That's cool.
Hmm.
And as you guys are kind of discussing this, everyone starts kind of quieting down, and even Mihai kind of moves out of the away from the altar and takes a seat a little bit. And out of the woods comes the Baron, heavily armored, like actually wearing like medieval armor, carrying his excuse me, he's got a sword strapped to his hip, and walked into up to the altar, looks around, and kind of seeing everyone gathered, he holds one hand up and he starts to laugh a little bit. He gestures around the clearing and he says, under the Camarilla, this city was a mess. Poorly organized, with little support, and no regard for what was going on. Tonight, I have new faces. I have loyal, long-time supporters. Tonight we talk about what actually matters in this city. Because, like it or not, we couple dozen are ultimately relatively irrelevant. There are bigger things that we need to be concerned with, or we will either disappear or be killed. First and foremost, let us discuss, of course, the pencil pushers in the room. The Camarilla is present in this city, and under the armistice, they have specific regions that are their territories. They're to be left alone in those territories. And by left alone, I mean entirely. If they have masquerade breaches, it is their responsibility to clean them up. If they have violence, they have damaged herds, they have sickness, that is their problem. Our priority is to keep our people safe, our territories. The big concern, of course, is that many of us do not follow the typical modern day persona. Many of us are in pagan communities. Many of us are in different cultures. He gestures and he says, Marty wears a goddamn suit with tails every day. Nobody in this city does that. We are the outcasts, despite the fact that many of us were here first. And right now, that means we are attracting the outcasts of the mortal society. Those same people are being targeted. Our first priority, of course, is minimize violence among the mortals when it targets our people. Second is recognize that any intervention cannot breach the masquerade. Third is that there are ongoing feuds in this city that need to be resolved. There is a large faction of werewolves in this city. Some of them are tolerable. Others are a detriment to us at best. A tornado of death, more likely. However, those who are genuine enemies are free game. We are not actively hunting them. Should we come in contact, we will put them down. For those of you who have never encountered a werewolf, recognize that if you are not fully prepared for that conflict, they will put you down in pieces. We have mages in this city, humans. Those mages, some of them cooperate with us. Some of them see us as fun experiments. We don't like those ones. There are those who want specific power. Some of them follow old methods. They may even attract the same followers that we are using as our own. First and foremost, let me remind you that the biggest threat to us all is mortal society. That also means the biggest threat to our enemies is also mortal society. Our enemies as a community are currently pretty low. We've dealt with the threat of the snake-worshipping Setites. The werewolves are relatively withdrawn, dealing with their own internal conflicts. And the mages don't really care about us as long as they get their places of power. Although I'm not giving this one up. However, there are whispers of other things. I have heard rumors of a faction of the church that specializes in hunting monsters that are becoming present in the city. They're, of course, just the church in general, a significant and often faith-driven group of mortals who can rationalize supernaturals as existing and seek to kill them. We have to eat. Hunger is always a threat to us. It's a big city, but with the Camarilla flexing as well, our population has tripled. Last but certainly not least is, of course, that inevitable plotting that they call progress. We are rooted in relics of our own times. I live in a forest. Some men will live in a bank or the upstairs of the building they were slain in. When our familiar world is torn down by mortals, we become endangered. First and foremost of these is our dear Tremere Marius. Marius has a strange working relationship with a human, a mage. However, they live in a decommissioned, historic graveyard. And we've reached a point citywide where a faction is pushing to have that graveyard consolidated so the rest of the property can be used for development. Now, the question, of course, is why do you care? Why do each and every one of you, and he sweeps his hand across in front of everybody, care ultimately what happens to a graveyard? Care what happens to the pagan followers of a couple of strange blood sorcerers? First and foremost, the answer should be simple: survival and profit. Some of you may have other concerns, other motives. Victor here doesn't like conflict because he collects a bottle of scotch from each and every year. How he can afford such a habit is unknown to me. But he has over 300 bottles of whiskey, all same year. What drives each of you? Ron back there cares because if the city goes to shit, he's another oddball in a city full of oddballs, and he's either going to get targeted or starve. Tormund over there has gotten his revenge that he wanted to. Has dealt with his disrespectful and demeaning brothers. His motive now is to unlock more secrets of his abilities. You can't do that when we're under attack. He looks again and then he sees Miss Duncern as well as the other Duncern in the city, Arthur. And he nods his head and he says, "We have a couple members of the Duncern clan with us tonight. Their family is known to the city and has run business partners with us before. And I notice here that the Camarilla has not bothered to mark up any areas as reserved for your team. How about the rest of you? Any specific motives? I'm sure Clan Giovanni's motive would be to establish some sort of holding in this city. Some territory that has been set aside deliberately for them, as opposed to being an afterthought.
Ailey just kind of glances at her cousin, like, yeah, that would make sense. She kind of gives him a nod.
Just another example of the Camarilla and their lack of attention. When wolves hunted my people, the Camarilla did not step up. Those who hunted the werewolves are here tonight, if they survived. The Camarilla did not send in enforcers. They did not send resources or backup. But when I suggest and whisper about that I'm not going to run the whole city, they manage to send in busloads of Camarillan kindred. We don't wait until you're ready to walk away to give a response. The Duncern family shall be given 1/4 of the rack as their own territory, as well as 1/4 of the estate districts where the largest homes reside. Those territories will come from my own personal holdings and will be transferred to Clan Giovanni. We have with us tonight some of the clanless, those who seek a place for themselves not defined by their family connection. Know that you are welcome here too, and a portion of the rack will be set aside as reserved for those not of the clans. We are not the Camarilla to care about bloodline or pedigree or purity of the blood as if such things mattered. I do not care which clan you hail from, nor what gifts that has graced you with, or curses it sprung upon you. That is your business.
Maria will glance around. Is there any appear to be reacting when he says the clanless thing?
There are a couple who kind of perk up a little bit.
They wait.
He turns back and says, "We will build in this community what any kindred should be building. A place where ability is respected over age or roofline. Finally, he looks around and he says, I will not tolerate clans that think they are inherently better than one another. I would say ask the previous Toreador, but all 4 of their leaders were executed at my own hand. If there are those in this community that have their own personal goals to pursue, you can seek out my Chamberlain, Mr. Excuse me, Mr. Mihai. Many of those goals may be of value to the city as a whole, and we can allot some resources to aid in your endeavors. Are there any questions on these matters?
Shake her head.
The pagan communities of mortals shall be considered off limits to feeding. We do not hunt down those who could be allies or those who have the potential simply because they have a skill we want in the moment. I would remind everyone that the last time a wolf crossed us, it bled to death on this table. The last time kindred failed to support our community, they were torn to pieces before this table. I invite anyone to bring individual questions forward. I invite them to work together, band together. And lastly, I invite everyone to watch their local tabloids. I've found that in this city especially, the tabloids can hold just as much truth as the news. Just last week, I read an article of a young child with a strange vacant stare. They said she never moves. As I watch these tabloids, I'm concerned because I do not know which is truth and which is fiction, but I know many of them warrant investigation. There's talk of an elderly woman. Most think she's mad. She talks about her daughter and what her daughter does every night. Her daughter died when she was 9 years old after a kidnapping. Has not been seen since. And yet this woman swears she hears that daughter. Others have even whispered that they thought they saw her moving through the house. Kids in the neighborhood report playing with a young 9-year-old girl after dark. Are there any specific questions regarding how to handle this new city we find ourselves in?
Wait, what was your hand? I'm just looking to learn about the society as a whole. So who'd be best to talk to for all of that?
Well, if you want effective answers and you don't mind a history lesson, Mr. Mihai can help.
Okay.
If you are looking to get a lay of the land in general, I suggest you get a hold of Detlov of Clan Nosferatu.
Should write down names. All right, thank you.
As he looks around again, he says, well, I assume those who have questions will come to me privately or hold their peace. I certainly do not need to take up anyone else's time the rest of tonight. The Baron, after a while, finally looks around, having seen that nobody's taking the opportunity to step up. And he points and he says, Mr. Delafoy, you've been unusually quiet. I expected if anyone would push back, it might be you. Delafoy shakes his head and he says, I do not know about young girls thought to be dead seen through neighborhoods. I do not know about the Camarilla not doing their job, or which building is okay for and which one I'm not allowed to step on. I do know that this city has things that need to be sorted out. I have been on 3 investigations for bodies found flayed to death. Skin missing.
How long ago did that happen?
The most recent one was 3 nights past. Keeping it hush hush because the city tends to panic when you use words like flayed alive, found skin.
Do you happen to know who the victim was?
We do not know the victim. We're waiting on dental results. It turns out it's hard to get fingerprints when there's no finger skin.
Maybe I, I could perform the mortuary and all that stuff. Maybe find some information that way.
He kind of looks around, and then he stands up, kind of leans in, and he says, "This is what we are doing with the revolution. This is why the Camarilla needs to die. To be left to rot until it collapses like an old farmhouse. Because here we have logic and thought coming from a clanless logic that may have been lost altogether if we didn't legitimately clan. We consider in this movement merit. What do you bring to the table? How effective is it? Is it good for the community? I suggest before the night is through to identify which portion of the holdings you will be claiming for yourself and do so, lest those lines get pushed and redrawn. In this city, there is an organization going out of its way to jeopardize the masquerade. That too is a concern. I leave it to all of you to get involved where you feel your skills will be best fit to establish yourselves. I am always open and available if you have questions or concerns. But I think that we have all heard me talk to the trees enough tonight. And I think that the best way we can wrap up this evening is by a reminder that as Anarchs, we have flexibility, but we also include everyone. And with that, he turns and gestures, and they bring out a large basin. I mean, large. Someone could almost lay down in this thing. And he brings a couple of people out, tied up. And as you watch, he kicks their knees out, that they're kneeling in front of this large basin. And with one movement, he draws his sword and decapitates them.
He looks a bit mortified.
Ailey kind of it's a very subtle smile at this.
As the blood pours into the basin, he gestures again, and Victor brings out a number of drinking horns, wooden steins, that sort of thing. And he says, "Let us celebrate what it means to be Anarchs, to be free to hunt and feast on our prey." And with that, he steps close to the basin, leans forward, and almost like he's bobbing for an apple, tucks his head into the blood-filled basin. Comes up, and you can see that he'd been drinking. He reaches down, grabs the scalpel from one of the heads, and he gets up and he says, "Well, don't be shy." He points to the head and he says, "I don't think he needs it anymore." And he turns and puts the head on his altar and kind of walks off to one corner. Well over there, Victor, as well as Jules, and a couple other kindred come over and start talking to him. And as they're talking, he's kind of watching to see who partakes, who sticks around, and who leaves.
Mm. Ailey kind of glances over at Maria. Oh. So you're a mortician then?
Yeah.
Is that what I gathered? Gotcha.
Yeah.
I think I can help with this. I would say the cause of death might be lack of oxygen to the brain.
That's a fair assessment.
I mean, being one being flayed alive isn't exactly a pretty image, is it? Takes
No.
some skill. Wouldn't you imagine? Working with a live victim and all.
Yeah. It probably drugged, or if they're really sadistic, tied down. There
Ailey kind of closes her eyes for half a second and cringes.
are a couple ways to go about it, but I need to see the body, and if I can get a hold of the family, I can do it at a discount if they have family. I'm betting they don't.
What makes you say that?
I don't know. Just a feeling. I don't know why you would hunt somebody down that would.
I mean, that depends on the individual who did it, I suppose. I mean, back in Scotland, there were a few girls with families who, according to the news, had been flayed alive.
I mean, I've seen the all kinds of documentaries, about Dahmer and Keane and Ted Bundy. I guess they weren't too picky. And you said there were 3 recently?
I
3?
do
No, it's 3.
believe that is what was said. 3.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know much about behavior. I've seen the results of a lot of stuff. So
I can't say much about behavior other than whomever did it is obviously nuts in their own way.
I mean, you can assume they're patient because that takes time.
Well, that depends on how good of a job they did, really.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I guess the same could be said for skill.
I
You could
wonder what they
arguably
did with
just
the skin. You said that there were bodies found, flayed alive, but they take the skin with them.
I mean, I think
All Saints
ideally,
Day is coming up. They might have wanted a costume.
A costume. She kind of chuckles. A snack.
yeah.
Who knows?
Didn't I think Ed Gein made faces and such masks from the skin?
That would fall under a costume, I do believe.
Yeah. And then she just All Saints Day. Okay, I get it. I forgot. That's what it used to be called, or it was right before. Um,
Hmm.
so you're from Clan Durnzen?
I'm sorry?
You're from Clan Durnzen?
No, my name is Ailey Duncern.
Dun,
We
Dun,
are
Dunsarn.
part of Clan Giovanni.
Okay. So are you in Anarchs or the Camarilla or?
Well, see, I can't really mess with the Camarilla all that much. Old old deals and promises, you know. So I can't say, I mean, I just can't directly mess with them or interfere in their business.
Okay. So she'll look Zach. So what are you thinking? Are you?
Well, they don't seem to care one way or the other what we do as long as we don't mess with them, so.
What about you, Zach? What are you thinking?
Well, they did mention some group that is trying to disrupt the masquerade. Is it the same group as the Flame, or was it a different group? I wasn't clear. It seemed like it might have been a different group.
I mean,
Yeah.
flaying disrupts a lot more than the masquerade. But yes, I would have to
Doesn't help.
imagine they're different groups.
Well, the disruption of the masquerade, I think, is more pertinent to our own situation. I mean, the
Yeah.
Flame is interesting, and they might be interesting people involved, and well, it never hurts to know more about that sort of thing. But the masquerade, well, that would be a bit of a, what is the common parlance now? A bummer.
Fleeing, yes, that would be well, interesting. There could be interesting people involved. Surely they're definitely dangerous too. But yes, not as dangerous as someone actively messing with the masquerade.
That part I'm not really sure how to help with. The flaying thing I could if I'm given the right direction.
I suppose you'd have to see some bodies, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I've seen worse.
Mm. Hmm.
Burn victims are usually my least favorite.
No?
Yeah.
I would have to imagine that they'd be less gooey than some.
Yeah.
All that barbecued flesh.
You hear
Why?
a real gravelly voice from one side, real raspy.
Not the clown.
Yeah, it comes from the clown.
Damn it.
And he says, "You have no fucking idea."
Oh no. I shall kind of look over her shoulder very slowly.
Ailey kind of has to bite her tongue for a second. No, I suppose we don't.
He kind of gestures to himself. He says, "It was a deep fryer, in case you were wondering."
Ow. I'm sorry to hear about that. That. Yeah.
Someone try and eat you.
Why?
No, they tried to rob me while I was working in a restaurant. And instead
You
of
should not have
being,
tried to hide in the deep fryer.
he chuckles a little bit at that and he says, "No, I suppose not. I should have hid them in the meat grinder, but
Mm.
hindsight is 20/20, as they say. Although I find it still to be a little blurry on one side."
What clan do you hail from, friend?
He chuckles and he says, "I was fortunate enough to be given the gifts of Melkov."
Oh.
Oh.
So you can see the hidden and hide what is should be seen.
I can see all sorts of things, but more importantly, I have learned how to understand my own mind and just what became of it after being thrown in a deep fryer. One could say they cooked my noodle.
Well, I hope you gave them a good licking.
Sadly, I have not located all of them yet. It
Oh.
turns out
Well,
masked robbers are hard to track after you have just
Well-
been greased.
Well, if you need to help taking a bite out of crime, I'm here for you.
Ailey groans at that one.
Not at the previous 5.
The problem is they say vengeance is a dish best served cold. And I tend to operate at a solid 350 degrees of peanut oil.
Oh.
That being said, there are certainly people in this world that need to be dealt with. And while I am moderately capable of tracking them down. I am not a fighter myself. I prefer to entertain. I'm great at kids' birthday parties.
I can only imagine.
Kids love clowns.
Do they? Okay.
Oh boy. And kids' birthday parties are your specialty, you say?
Oh, yes, they're quite delicious.
A real scream, I'm sure.
They don't scream if you know what you're doing.
Ugh.
I find it's the one place I don't have an urge to murder everybody around me because children have not yet had the opportunity to grow into worthless shitbags like the rest of the people in this world.
It's a
Oh, the world is full of many shitbags.
it's a nice yet pessimistic way to look at it. But yeah.
You'll find you become a bit more of a pessimist after you spend 9 months in the hospital getting skin grafts on your face.
No, I can see that. I definitely see that.
I have a suggestion for you, friend. I don't know, but it seems to me that there was a Samisi somewhere around here, wasn't there?
Well, the Chamberlain is a member of the old clan, yes.
Wouldn't he be able to help?
No, there's clan politics and differences of belief, and that was the first thing I thought of when I heard these tales of these mythical flesh-crafting Zamitzi, but he said, "Oh, we don't touch that. It's evil and corrupt and bad." And I looked at him and I said, "We're fucking vampires. Are you serious right now?"
Exactly.
At which point I got a lecture about their clan's beliefs and spirituality and promptly walked away.
I see. Well, perhaps you might find a more modern fellow that is a bit looser on such spiritual morality.
Possibly, but I'm not going to hold my breath very heavily as they belong to typically to a faction that wouldn't be very popular around here.
Yes, but holding your breath is actually a specialty of yours now.
That's true.
I'm just simply saying don't give up hope. There was a bit of a conflict with some Setites, if I understand things, yes?
Well, that I stay the hell out of. As I said, spirituality's not my forte. But I understand that Mr. Tormund here is technically part of Clan Setite, although he's largely spent his time as a kindred learning from the Tremere and from the Baron, who was a prince. It's all very confusing.
Well, but what I'm saying is I assume during the conflict there was some captured, yes?
At one point, I do not believe they are around any longer.
But going back to that model of operation, I imagine there could be a visit to a neighboring city that might have a faction of some of the more modern sorts, and some of them might come under your sway, and then they could use their gifts to your advantage.
Yes, I suppose such things are theoretically possible. I, as a lowly fast food mascot and children's performer, are unlikely to have the resources necessary.
Well, we should definitely look into helping you. Such altruism just makes me remember the better times. I look forward to doing something to assist you. Here's my card. Please
please give me a call.
He takes your card, puts it in literally a Velcro wallet,
What name out
and
there?
says,
I
I'm
pull
sure
out
I will
$100 bill.
contact you at some point.
I pull out $100 bill, and perhaps buy yourself something nicer than that as well. And I hand it to him.
He looks and he says, what? Not sure what you mean by nicer.
Velcro. It went out in the 80s.
But it holds things very well.
Oh, well, leather. The things made from skin. Much better.
Maybe that's what they did with the skin from those flayed men.
Yep,
Wallet.
could be. Well, do we know if they're men?
Men, women,
Human.
human, human flesh wallets.
I have to go home and watch that Dean documentary now.
You hear the clown go, they think that's something else, actually. When Haley makes the comment about flesh wallets, he says, I think that's something else, actually.
Oh.
Oh. Oh, she just kind of shakes her head.
What did Bender say in Nature's Pocket?
I do appreciate your time, however, I must be going. I tend not to walk around too late at night. We wouldn't want anyone to get the wrong impression and think I'm the wrong sort of clown.
Oh, yeah, no, you definitely don't want that.
99 red balloons.
He looks at you and he says, balloons are so cliche. I prefer a Happy Meal. It gets a prize inside.
Need a shower.
And he walks out, and after doing so, one of the others, vampires, looks over at you. He says, well, now that mildly disturbing and definitely odd conversation is complete, I couldn't help but overhear you discussing these flayed individuals. The man who walks up to you is dressed, he's got a long coat with tails, got a vest and tie on, ruffles on his sleeves a little bit, very Victorian looking.
Ah, yes, Marty. Sophia told me to speak with you. I'm so glad to make your acquaintance.
Yes, I'm sure she was quite helpful in pointing in my direction.
And do you know something of the flayed people?
Well, I was brought in as a consultant on one of the bodies. I did not investigate all three, but on one of them, the detective was competent enough to recognize something didn't add up and contact me. The other two I found out after the fact, of course.
And what didn't add up?
Well, based on the cut patterns, the skin was removed as one piece. However, based on the quality of cuts, this was someone who had no fucking idea what they were doing. which means they should not have been able to remove it in one piece. We also found shards of what we thought was glass at first, but in fact turned out to be obsidian, making us wonder if there was a ritualistic component to these.
Where did they find the obsidian?
Well, it sure wasn't on his skin.
Well,
No.
yeah, I imagine it wasn't.
It seemed primarily concentrated along the cut edges, with bits scattered the rest of the way, leading us to believe it was probably flakes off of the original instrument used for the death.
So an unskilled hand that either got lucky
Or was it intentionally done in a fashion to look unskilled?
Or was he in a hurry, or was it due to a shitty tool? I mean, I don't
Right?
know a lot of obsidian crafters, but I feel like that's probably something that's hard to work with.
It's like you said, taking off, flaying the flesh and getting it all in one piece would take some knowledge.
Yeah. Do you? Well, I mean, it's sort of genders, age, any idea?
Well, it seems to be two male, one female. We weren't able to discern age, however, we venture a guess of not too old, as the dental appeared to be fairly good. Minimal signs of dental work or teeth loss. All three suffered from hair loss currently. So
Yeah.
we were not able to use that metric.
No.
Where were they found?
Well, that's was the other unusual part. Typically, if it's ritualistic, it's in a clearing in the woods or done in a specific public place to send a message. These three were two were in alleys and one was in a park on a bench.
Ugh.
You think that was where the deed was actually done, or were they dumped there?
Well, it seemed to be based on the amount of mess, if not the exact spot, it was pretty close.
How does one flay someone still alive in an alley without causing chaos?
It would take time, a lot of time.
Take time, lots of screaming, lots of noise.
Just because they're alive doesn't mean they're conscious.
Yeah, they could have been drugged.
That too.
Do you happen to know who the? Oh, they haven't identified him yet.
Perhaps you can find something in your own investigation, Miss Mortician.
Yeah, I can look into it. But, I'm not like city based, or I'm not city employed rather. Just run my own little
Oh,
home, but I can.
Marty hands you a card and he says, "Here, take this down to the city morgue. Tell them you're an independent consultant for me who wants to review the body."
Sure, thanks. What's your name again?
He looks.
point
He
to the
says-
card.
And on the card it says, Marty Delafoy, private investigator and consultant.
Okay, that makes sense. Hey, sometimes they're different cards and names and such. All right, Marty. I'm Maria. Pocket. Okay, well, I'll go get to work on that. I'm busy. All right.
Well, if you have any success, do keep us informed.
Yes. I'd be interested to know what you come up with.
Marty, do you know what the group was he was referring to that dislikes the masquerade?
Well, I think that was just a kind of the Baron's way of looking at the particular situation. I am not sure that they necessarily dislike the masquerade so much as they have disregarded it, and I cannot say they for certain they are vampires. It certainly looks like it, however. Whatever they are, they're certainly supernatural and exposing select areas to uh, far more detail than anyone should ever have.
Well, what kind of things are they doing?
Well, there was rumors of a serial biter.
A serial biter.
People reporting that they were literally being bit on the neck and shoulder.
Oh, I've heard about that. Bath salts, I think it is, isn't it?
Well, that was what the eventual media publication was. Of course, none of us truly believed that was the cause. Um,
Are there even shoulder biters? That just sounds so weird.
Well, there's definitely ankle biters. I'll testify to that.
Those are dogs, though. Shoulder and ankle biting vampires? I feel like that doesn't meet any real goal other than just biting. I mean, I guess some people are into that, but
Was there any more information about them besides that there was some, I assume, non-lethal, just random assaults, biting?
well, some claim to have witnessed supernatural occurrences.
like,
I don't have the full details on it, but I believe one of them was, quote, seeing a man's eyes turn red.
Contacts.
mm-hmm.
Potentially. Color changing contacts aren't something I've experienced, but I'm sure they could exist. There's a number of different ones, all very subtle-ish.
Could it be an orphaned Garou? Gangrel. They eyes turning red, the bites. He's just perhaps doesn't know what he's doing.
And that's certainly possible. I
Mm-hmm.
don't find it the most likely, but
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm afraid I don't know the other gangrel in the city other than Gunnar. Are there many?
Well, locally here, of course, we have uh, Vigo. There are some that stayed with or showed up with the Camarilla. Of them, the only one I know is James Kim, who's a city runner. I believe he was involved in, at one point at least, uh, a number of illicit substance trafficking projects.
Bath salts again.
Gotta love them bath salts. Hmm. Any other things of importance regarding these masquerade breaches?
Nothing that I know of, but again, I had focused more on some other markets.
Other markets?
Well, as a police investigator, I deal with direct police calls.
Imagine you get a lot of interesting ones.
Yeah, you
These
have no idea.
these flayed bodies, were they found in the north or south of Amsterdam?
Actually spread around the city in 3 different locations. Um,
Hmm.
2 were a bit more northern, but one was still relatively far south.
So would we expect the Camarilla to be investigating this as well?
One would imagine at some point they will.
And Gunnar's instructions, do they preclude a joint task force on this subject? It seemed like he wanted us to leave them alone.
Well, the problem is that would require someone to violate territory agreements, either us or them.
I thought the territory agreements were in regards to hunting.
Well, technically, it's in regards to territory in general. Let's just say you are there for another reason and not for hunting. If you go in their territory, how do they know what you're there for?
Well, I assume that they could only accuse us of violating it if they caught me hunting in their territory.
Arguably, they can say you're hunting, just hadn't succeeded yet.
They could.
So any Camarilla vampire that comes to the north is to be killed on sight?
Oh, well, if he is in the northern half of the rack, yes. Well, not necessarily killed, but
Hmm.
certainly is to be addressed as a violation of said agreement.
Well, I guess I did not quite understand the armistice. I apologize. Our good friend here is non-aligned. She is only allowed to hunt in the red light district. So when she leaves Elysium, she's to be killed?
No. Because you remember how I said that I can't mess with the Camarilla or interfere with their business? They also can't interfere with mine.
Yes, I was speaking to the fact that we're in the north, and therefore you are, according to this armistice, limited to the red light district. That means if you're in the north, you're to be treated as an enemy. I mean, you see how silly that is. Of course, I am not going to treat you as an enemy, darling. But do you see what I'm saying?
No, as it was
That would be a
stated,
terrible.
she is explicitly not unaligned. She is simply not of either faction. They are a separate entity, and in her case, as mentioned by Gunner, in fact, her clan has a territory within the Anarch region that Gunner has given them.
Very generous of him, might I add. No wonder my cousin speaks highly of him.
It seems a poorly negotiated deal if there are threats to us that can cower in the southern half of the city, protected by this treaty that we cannot pursue because we will be accused of violating it.
If they're in Camarillan territory, they're not threats to us, however. They're threats to the Camarilla, and therefore
Well,
are their problem.
I think that what is it that was the current going ons in the Middle East? Something about ISIS and launching attacks into Syria and returning back to territories, Kurds and Turkey and all that. Unfortunately, threats don't stay still. So even though they might be based out of one territory, they would launch attacks into us, return back to their safe territory, and as long as they're not attacking the Camarilla, be safe from reprisals from us. You see the issue there?
Well, then it's important to not let them get to their territory, isn't it?
I feel that would apply for any type of, and she kind of holds her fingers up in the quotations, warfare, don't you?
Much better, I think, if it was clarified that it was only those caught hunting, as in drinking, as opposed to just traveling through. That is much too broad a ban.
Not if your explicit goal is to keep all of them out of your territory.
Hmm.
No offense, but Gunner is negotiating from a position of strength. He can simply say what is verboten for them and still claim travel rights wherever he wishes. He does not have to treat them as equals.
He doesn't have to. He didn't have to allow them in the city at all.
Exactly.
But he has brought them here with a purpose, given them a section of the city to deal with, largely so he did not have to.
What of the other supernaturals in the city? I heard talk of the wolves and mages. Where do they all fit into this? They just go wherever? Untouched?
They have their own rules and restrictions and are not subject to ours. Where that kind of goes.
Hmm.
I suppose, however, since statistically speaking, the police will call me at least once tonight. That I should get going.
At least once. Lucky you.
One more clarification, if I can bother you for it. The red light district is open to all three groups, or is it limited only to the unaligned?
It is open to everyone.
All right, so if I wanted to have a Camarilla friend, I could meet them in the red light district.
Correct.
Very good. And is there an Elysium in the red light district?
No.
Oh, well, that is unfortunate. And who would have the right to declare an Elysium there? Both the prince and the baron, or neither?
Well, for it to be formally recognized by either party, their leader would have to declare it. And at this point, I believe neither of them are inclined to.
So the only place I can go to meet people is in the red light district. And in that place, there is nowhere that is safe to meet. Very good. Now I'm clear.
Everything goes. I mean that literally.
You can see, of course, how some of this treaty perhaps was negotiated to set up certain situations or to prevent them.
Well, I guess I would have to be in the inner circle to understand exactly what fruit is hoped to be born.
I'm new to all of this, in the city, so I'm not entirely sure what's what.
Wheels within wheels, I assume.
Isn't it always?
Indeed, indeed. Well, thank you for your time, Marty.
Of course, glad I could assist.
She'll give him a slight smile.
Yeah, kind of nods as he gets up and starts to head off.
So, Allie, you're at quite the advantage. You get to dabble or listen in, at least, at Camarilla meetings and Prince Courts, as well as here.
Well, I could, but again, me saying anything could be considered interfering in their business.
Huh. So you feel that you're actually have your hands a bit tied and can't do anything?
Oh, don't get me wrong, I could listen in. And such, it just depends on how they choose to interpret it. No, of course, they can't punish me, but my own can.
Yes, your family is known to have certain standards, as is mine.
I'm not 100% on all the details, but yeah, that much I do know.
I wonder if, according to their armistice, if they're allowed to bring guests. If I were to invite a Camarilla vampire over to my side and they were there as my guest, if that would be allowed. I wonder, do they have this written down? Is there a contract? Something I can view?
I suppose it would be a question for the Baron.
I'm a bit afraid to bother him. It seems he kills people who annoy him.
Well,
I certainly don't want to criticize his negotiation skills.
it is a simple question that, I mean, I don't think it will hurt or annoy anybody, but that's just my guess. The way I see it is you're just trying to be clear on the details.
So important, I think, to be clear on the details.
It most certainly is.
Is Sophia and the Baron around?
The Baron is not. Sophia still is.
All right. Well, I will wander over to Sophia. Before I leave, though, Ollie, here's my card. Please give me a call. We should get together sometime. And if you do pursue any of those rather interesting things, I would, of course, be interested in knowing what is developing. I assume the Camarilla vampires are going to be looking into those same exact issues. And therefore, any leads they bring up, I would love to know.
All right. Excellent. I think I can, if I hear anything and look into things, I'll definitely pass it along.
And where did you say you were from?
I'm from Scotland.
Oh,
Edinburgh.
very good. Very good.
She does have a heavy Scottish accent, but Holly sucks at those. So.
Well, I imagine, based on a comment you made earlier, Holly knows exactly why I want to meet with her. So I look forward to doing so.
Yes. Oh boy.
All right. Anything else you guys want to do before we wrap up?
I'm going to talk to Sophia and get as much clarification as I can on things. Otherwise, I'm good.
All right.
And of course, I offered to walk Ollie home.
Oh. She would decline, implying that would be a very bad idea for him.
Oh, the forest is more friendly to you than me?
You have no idea.
Oh, all right. Interesting.
Well, we'll just say it's for your own safety.
Do your deals extend beyond the Anarchs and the Camarilla?
My family has dabbles in a little bit of everything, from what I understand. Just depends on which branch of the family.
And your branch?
We handle money.
Oh, well, that's also what I do.
Yes.
Perhaps we can talk about a co-venture.
Perhaps.
Well, give me that call and we'll get together.
Excellent.
Good evening.
she'll give him a nod, and she's gonna, being as the Baron you said is nowhere to be seen, she's going to go along her way.
All right. Once everybody kind of filing out, wrapping up for the night. And the Chamberlain, Victor, kind of, does take the time to thank everybody for attending. And with that, we will wrap it up. Thank you, players, for playing and watchers for watching. This has been another episode of Nightfall in Amsterdam.